Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that brand new intro that we can finally put at the beginning, and I don't have to say stupid shit in order to cue it up. So, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap this week's Mets versus Astros series, as well as all the other news and the rumors and everything that has been taking place in the last days. But before we do get into that, we do have our usual house cleaning. Of course, I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for this very podcast that is now recorded live on Sundays and Thursdays following every single series of games. For those of you watching on playback and want to join the conversation, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, and you guys could chat with us live, and it wouldn't look pre-recorded. It will just be live. You'll be talking to us, real people. Anyways, also, for those of you in the live chat right now, we want to let you know that we love reading your questions, your comments, your concerns. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you are not being ignored. They are just being starred throughout the show, and we will try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features Frank's instant reactions after every single Mets game, titled The Mets Frankly Post Game. Also, for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. on Mondays and Fridays the following day, as these episodes are recorded. So without further ado, let's begin episode number 62. Now, Frank, I had to be you for the first 2 days of this series, but you got to save the best one for last. This disaster of a bullpen where everybody was asking, what just happened? And they were asking basically, who the fuck is Matt Festa?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, anytime you have a rain delay in the ninth inning that lasts multiple hours, just the game, it gets really magnified as the sense where it's like, well, I already started my day at 1:40 watching the Mets, and if it's going to be ending, after 7 o'clock, at least make it worth it. If it's still investing 6+ hours essentially, and to see it go down like that, as far as a lot of things that we've been concerned about, things that we've talked about, pretty much every single episode, honestly. I mean, despite how good things have been lately, we talked about how there still are some concerns as far as some things that could come back to bite the Mets. And it did a whole lot of biting, I mean, there definitely is a lot to get into, a lot of people not getting the job done, and they all are part of the same group as far as the positions that they play. So collectively, it just has been very frustrating overall. I mean, it just goes without saying. We're like, oh, well, yesterday was really rough, but don't worry, we're going to call up some guys and we're going to have some fresh arms in here, because the problem is just that everybody's too tired. Everybody's overworked. They have to pitch multiple innings every night because the starting pitchers going past 5 is such a task. So we'll get these really rested arms in there. But when the rested arms stink, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. You need to be rested, but also just have good pitchers on your team. Like, that's what it comes down to. Ultimately, stuff prevails. Talent prevails. Whether you're tired, you're rested, you're both. I mean, like, I said in the recap, but it's like, how many more 93-mile-an-hour fastball guys can I see? If you're not throwing sidearm or submarine or have some amazing pitch with insane break, you're essentially useless. You're essentially just a guy who's up there just throwing. You're just a body. And that's literally what, I mean, Matt Festa, poor guy, local story, first time out there. I'm just not in the mood today. I'm really not. I don't want to give anybody the benefit of the doubt. I don't want the excuses. I sat here for dang near 6 hours watching this crap. It's just like, and don't get me wrong, Ottavino too, like, we've made our peace. I mean, we've had whole segments dedicated to this guy. We've given you all the advanced numbers of just how bad he's been. And we're going to have to get into it again because the man has more than 9 lives. I mean, let's be honest. He has 900 lives, it seems like. So, it goes on a lot of guys. Like, I know it's easy to just kind of pile on Festa because of, like, he was the last guy we saw and it was just so bad. But, I mean, it goes back to Saturday. The walks. I mean, oh my gosh. How many times have we talked about this? Just coming in and walking the stadium. And when you have a lead, it wasn't a massive lead. We've seen the Mets blow bigger leads, but you're up 4 runs. Throw strikes. Again, throw quality strikes. Like it's asking too much, I know, but for Diekman to come in there, he's walking 2 batters. Reed Garrett can't get anybody out. Nothing, he couldn't get a single out. He's walking 2 batters. You have to hit by pitches. It's just like they just do everything and collectively. And I'm gonna throw McGill into this too. Between the 0-2 base hits, the hit by pitches while ahead in the count, and the walking of inferior hitters and just the walks in general are all basically the cardinal sins of pitching. And this team tends to do that pretty consistently. And again, it's like this offense, it continues to bail them out. You know what I mean? Like the 6 runs, it was almost enough, but not quite, because the bullpen, they could just do so much. Danny Young, they just broke his arm. He's gone. I mean, I don't think we're going to see him again, honestly, at this point. And then even today, like the offense got off to a slow start, but then they got clicking. It ended up not mattering. So it is tough, really. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like, there is a lot of guys out, and what also is frustrating, I've talked about it before, but when you're watching Matt Festa come up, you're like, oh, come on, there's got to be other guys that the Mets have available, right? But when you pull up the Syracuse roster and, the guys that the Mets signed in the offseason, like to these minor league contracts and guys that we thought might have an impact, guys that we talked about like Kyle Crick, he's hurt. Andre Scrub, out for the year. Yaxel Rios is a guy we talked about. He's hurt. Grant Hartwig's had LB experience. He's hurt. So not only like are the major league arms hurt, like the Brooks Raley, the Sean Reed Foley, Diaz being suspended, Drew Smith is hurt now. As we know, Jorge Lopez threw his glove in the crowd. Like, so that's one part. But also the fact that the depth is also injured. You're really just scraping the bottom of the barrel, and that's where a guy like Matt Festa just kind of shows up, and you're just in a really tough predicament. And there's only so much they could do. I mean, as far as like on the managing side with Mendoza, as much as I want to crush him, it's like you're really just kind of you're hanging on by a thread when you're kind of out there with this group of guys. Like there's bound to be blowups. You could only kind of hold on for so long. It's like we say, like Daniel Nunez can only do something for so long. It's just asking a lot overall. So it just feels like you're kind of just hoping that these guys can get through. And it's just like the fact that there was even a conversation that Severino should be going out there in the 8th inning when this guy had like 12 guys on base. I mean, that really just kind of shows you the state of the bullpen. So I don't think he made the wrong decision there. I think Hauser has been better than we could hope for, honestly, since he moved to the pen. So it just feels like there's a lot going on. And, the Diaz suspension, I know the whole like, oh, the Mets are going to play so many teams under 500 and they're going to be facing the Nationals and the Pirates and all this stuff. I'll tell you what, I would
A major
rather...
league team's a major league team. I don't care who it is.
Exactly. A major league team's a major league team. The Nationals are still a divisional rival. They're calling up James Wood. So, they got something to be excited about. And for me, I'm more okay with facing the better teams if I have off days. The Mets are now going to go into one of the toughest parts of their schedules as far as not having rest days. Yes, the strength of schedule as far as the teams they're playing are easier, but with no rest days, as we've talked about 100 times, the rotation that cannot go more than 5 innings on a daily basis with no off days, I just don't see how I don't see how it works out. You know what I mean? Like the offense, their only chance is the offense needs to continue averaging 6 runs a game, which is a tough ask, but that's their only chance because for a fact that Peterson and Manaea and Quintana and these guys, they're not going more than 6. So if you're asking for 4 innings of bullpen every single day with no off days, with the guys that they have available, it's impossible. You know what I mean? It's like if Nunez goes 2 one day and then Hauser goes 2 another day and Reed Garrett goes 2 another day, you're bound to find yourself in a situation where like Friday, Saturday, where Diekman works on back-to-back days, or Danny Young works on back-to-back days, or Ottavino works on back-to-back days. Like you're just going to find yourselves in these scenarios where you're just not expecting much. So, and again, it's like even Christian Scott, like that's not a solution either, because it's like we've talked about, his arm's not built up. If they call up Scott to start like Wednesday or Thursday or whatever, if
Probably
he's
will be
only
Thursday. Yeah.
he's only going 5 innings too. You know what I mean? So that's still not going to solve the problem. So, sending McGill down to call up Festa, it doesn't look smart.
Yeah.
I mean, the one critique you can make is maybe go Tyler J instead. At least he's pitched a couple of times this season.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I just think
it's pick your poison.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm saying. Like you're it's like a ticking time bomb everywhere, and it's like no matter what, who you go to, it's just not there's no good scenario. You know what I mean? Like, well, you could kind of play out all the options in your head, but none of them are appealing. I mean, there's risk involved with basically all of them. And, as far as someone like Fujinami, he's still working on his rehab assignment. And Bryce Montes de Oca, he's still working on his rehab assignment. Now, those two guys, they fulfilled the stuff category that I'm complaining about. I'm saying, show me velo. Fujinami and Bryce are the two guys that are going to provide it. Now, on the flip side, it's like the walks. That's their problem, especially with Fujinami.
Absolutely.
So, and that's another sense where you're picking your poison. It's like, okay, do you want stuff or do you want guys that don't walk? But with a lot of these Mets pitchers, they can't do either.
The one thing about Bryce is that he's not intending to try walk guys and like nibbling around the strike zone. He's coming after you. Like he just goes after you. And that's what I like about him, and that's the main reason why I think the stuff will play in the major leagues. But, we'll see. It'll be a while for Bryce to come back. Shintaro Fujinami, there's still a lot of question marks with him, even though he has pitched fairly well so far in his rehab and everything. Hopefully, maybe he is an option down the line. He's not part of the 40-man roster as of right now. He's on the 60-day, so he was taken off of it. But I think that when you look at the Mets bullpen right now, they're in a scenario where they are so shorthanded. They are so taxed. They are so nearly dead. It's not even July. They are halfway through. They just played their 81st game of the season, so they are officially halfway through. What you're looking at right now is your top guys, most of them are out. The backups, they're hurt. The backups, they're hurt and taxed. The backups are also taxed and also possibly hurt. Some of the minor league depth is hurt. In this area right now, it doesn't really have anything to do with, well, Stearns is supposed to be the pitching guy. Every single one of these options are dying. They're dropping dead 81 games into the season. Let's be real for a second. I don't think there was any point in the season where David Stearns was very determined to say, I want to call up Matt Festa. I don't think he ever wanted to do that. Ever. But there isn't any options. Other options that could be options down the line don't really have any of that major league experience, and I don't think they want to waste any of that service time or anything. And we will get into how I would kind of design this pitching staff, kind of adjusting to what is available and the kind of situation that they're in regarding what the Mets have sustained through half of the year of what they have proved that they can handle and what they can't. But what you're looking at as of right now, the Diaz suspension hurt you. It hurt you bad. It's hurting you really, really bad. And it really stinks because I personally don't think, and this is just me being a Diaz fan possibly, but I personally don't think he did cheat. I think it was just the umpire saying, it's too sticky. If you're not giving me any evidence, I'm not going to believe that he cheated. So and that goes the same with how it went for Drew Smith and how it went for Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer, whole other different thing, whole other different situation of what we're relying on. But the problem with this is the Mets are in such a point where one domino falls, the entire set explodes. Not just one domino falls and the entire thing goes down, the entire thing will explode. One walk, one defensive miscue, it will completely cost them. For some reason, that's another point that we talk about. And this is another thing that was just put into the chat. I forget who said it. I think it was M. Easy here. He said the walks is on Hefner to me. He's never corrected this.
Well,
and this is where.
Well, hold on a second. There's one thing I saw today, like not a bit, of course, but I can't remember who was pitching at the time. I don't know if it was. I don't think it was Sevy. It might have been. No, it had to be Sevy. But Sevy was pitching and just falling behind in the count. There was that streak where he had. I think it was like 9 batters in a row. It was first pitch ball, and he's in a 2-0 count, and he's already. I'm pretty sure walked a batter at this point, and. Hefner doesn't go out there. No. Torrens doesn't go out there. Lindor goes out there, and then Torrens follows. So again, it's like Alvarez is more aware than Hefner. Alvarez is more aware than Torrens. But it's just like, again, to me, it's that
this
like
is a point to me
if an infielder has a better feel for the pitcher than the pitching coach, not even the catcher. If a shortstop, albeit a team leader, has a better feel for the pitcher than the pitching coach, it is such a bad look. As far as he's just not aware.
But Lindor's not a team leader. He's a terrible person. For when I say in this point to Hefner and what he said about this, and obviously as we all talk about the domino effect, when it rains it pours, of where they can possibly stop the situation in its tracks, but they choose to not to. And this is one point of Hefner that we've talked about all the time. He doesn't seem to have much of a feel for the mental game at all. And it really has been one of those situations, especially in this bullpen, where they're all taxed, they're tired, they're overworked. There really doesn't seem to be any initiative there as to where they can kind of get better results by kind of calming the pitcher down, because most of the walks in this game will always be kind of a mental thing if you have good stuff. You need to be able to be there on the mound, and your head can't be, 4 rows deep into the fucking stands while this is happening. And of course, I'll always be the technical guy, the analytical guy, the skeptic guy. But again, these are situations where they're tight situations, and you're going to have to go out to the mound and, I don't know, coach, do your job.
Yeah.
I don't know how to really say this, and the fact that you have to say that to a major league pitching coach is sad. It's sad.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's that between, and that's the other part of it too, is that you could say Stearns does a good job of identifying talent, bringing in talent, but what I always point to is that who leads the American League in ERA right now? Seth Lugo. And this is a guy that we thought he was done. We thought he was done. Even I was like, I guess Lugo doesn't have any more. The Mets just overworked him. But and I just think that's a bad reflection of the pitching coach, that when other eyes get to see these players, you see better performance. And I just think that if you have so many pitchers have a walk problem and just so many guys struggling to find any semblance of consistency, I feel like some of that goes to the pitching coach as well. And I just think that, you're seeing Ottavino struggle, and you see Diekman struggle, and you see just all these guys struggling. And to me, I just think it's the worst look when the second-year catcher is just more aware of what's going on than the pitching coach. But I just don't know. And it's I talk about with the pitchers themselves, but I think also for the pitching coach, it's what is his leash? What more do you have to see to where you're okay, maybe we do need to kind of get someone else in here. Now, I don't think they're going to do it mid-season, but I can't. I mean, I can see Hefner being here another year, but I really don't want to see that. I just think that it's been too much. I feel like we're just talking about this all the time. The feel is not there, and again, it's where's the improvements? Where's the reclamation projects? Where's this? Where's that? And It's crazy that even Adcock, he had like a phenomenal outing when he was out there. He was the one guy that actually could pitch without walking the ballpark and be productive. And not again, we talk about like the major league guys, Ottavino, Diekman, all these other pitchers. So it's just weird that like Nunez and now Adcock seem to be your most reliable relievers. And it's like, that's not how it's supposed to be. So it's like, there's supposed to be some sort of talent. Like there's supposed to be some sort of stuff in some of these pitchers, and just feels like they're not getting it out of them.
I feel like
And
they've just run
yeah,
out of it. I think
yeah,
they've just run out of like
it's
all
crazy.
these possible options. Like I don't, I mean, obviously it doesn't seem like they even plan to have Nunez up here or Danny Young up here. It just, they've gotten so deep into the depth that there's only so much you can really do, that like where the depth is even getting hurt in the minor leagues. And I feel like they're just in a situation where they just really can't push out of it. And I'm not trying to make any like excuses here, because you obviously need to see these guys do their job. But like, I don't really see what you really can do when your best option out there is Matt Festa. Like, and like, I understand, like, the Mets, if there is like somebody out there, like everybody wants to say like trade, like make a trade or like make a move, or, and like don't pick up these guys who were DFA'd by other teams. They were DFA'd for a reason. That's all really that's out there right now. Like if you're going to make a trade for a reliever, you're going to do it at the deadline. Nobody voluntarily trades assets in the middle of the season, way before the deadline, for a reliever. I mean, even the Mets, when they made the trade for Edwin Diaz, which was a very unorthodox trade, we know it was in the offseason. That was a big star-studded offseason move for Brody Van Wagenen. And again, this is another real point. We talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Easy. I mean, he's killing it with the Hefner takes here. Who has Hefner made better? We don't know. We really don't know.
I've seen the opposite.
I can't answer
like
that
I've
question.
seen Michael Tonkin be better as a Yankee than as a Met. I've seen like even like Anthony Bonda be better somewhere else. Like you see it a lot. Even was Hefner here with Waka, or was that different pitch?
Hefner was here. His first year was 2020. So yes.
So even like Waka is now better. Like like Lugo is better. So it just seemed like it happened with multiple guys. So it's like the reverse. It's like you haven't seen Hefner make people better, but you see people be better without him. So I feel like that says just as much as well as like what they do elsewhere.
I feel like there's a few pieces that he does very well, and there's a few pieces to pitching that he just has no absolute feel for. Like, pitch sequencing is a little bit of a problem with him. I did not really understand that 0-2 pitch that McGill threw, hanging curveball to the middle of the zone. Did not really understand that. I don't even understand Tyler McGill even throwing curveballs at the uses that he does. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of different components that
pitch sequencing has changed a lot with the pitch clock and pitch calm and all that stuff.
I wouldn't throw a
yeah, but there isn't as much of a cat and mouse game where you really could kind of go through a few things and really think about it. It's more so like call it and throw it. There's not much time to really go to other stuff. So I don't even think Hefner is really involved in that, to be honest with you. I'm not sure the coach's name. It's not. He stands next to Mendoza. He's like around the front step. And I found it interesting too, is that like you have a coach who's on the front step, then you have Mendoza, then you have the bench coach, and then Hefner's like behind them standing up, like with the other coaches in front of him. So I feel like he can't even see what's going on. Like it seems like he's just always like a backseat passenger to what's going on. So I really don't, it might be probably the catching coach that is doing a lot of the, if there are any signals, it'd probably be from him. So I don't really. It seems that like he's just kind of there as I don't know what, like if Alvarez is the one that's making more of an effort to do a lot of the mental game and more of the actual coaching. I'm not really sure what he's doing a lot of times on a game to game basis.
Yeah, I don't know. I've gone in conclusions about Jeremy Hefner in and out. I've kind of just accepted that he's there. I think that in a vacuum with what they've been handed, with all the injuries, with all the,
yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation.
Like defensive miscues around them. Yeah. It's just, I think, the defense has just been, they were supposed to be good. and it hasn't been good. And I think there is a lot around them that is not really controllable for a lot of the coaches here. But then you can also kind of throw somebody else under the bus as to what's going on with the defense. So there is something behind it as to where maybe the formula behind them and some of the guys, what they're teaching these guys, I don't know. But coaching is supposed to make players better and not worse or stay the same. There's supposed to be kind of a maximizing there, and it's been repellent. Let's just say that there's been moments where it's been good, like Reed Garrett. He's been impressive so far in general this year, but he's had a few blowups. You've had Daniel Nunez come up here and do fairly well. Danny Young would come up here and do fairly well. They reinvented the Severino's game. He's now more of a ground ball pitcher. He's pitching to more contact. He's been able to stay healthy, which is more impressive in itself. And I don't know. I think they're kind of in a situation where they've had to pivot so many goddamn times that they can't really find a foundation to anything. And it's just a tough situation now. And that doesn't really excuse what we've seen from Jeremy Hefner, because we've had a lot of question marks about him. We've wondered about him for a long time. He's been a topic of a discussion for a long time. But I think that there's a lot of issues that are just overlapping that you can control and then you can also not control. And it's been tough to string these 9 innings of pitching together. It's really been a really big problem as to why the pitching has not been able to gain consistency, or why it's been taxed, or why they haven't been able to go distance. There's a lot, and sewing it together has been pretty tough, especially with some of your top guns not available. I mean, Senga has not thrown a pitch this year. Diaz has not been himself. And, the top guns are, for what they're supposed to carry most of the weight, haven't carried a single piece of the weight that much this entire year. And like we said, we're 81 games in the season. We're halfway through. So it's been tough. And the fact that they're at 40 wins is somewhat impressive, but something's got to hold up, and you can't just have the offense bail you out every single time, because they're not going to score 10 runs a game. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if you could even call up a Budo over a Festa kind of thing. I just feel like, at least with Budo, I'm like, can he get through 8 innings without giving up 5 runs? Like 8 innings?
Yeah, I'll get
could,
into that. Yeah,
but also, like, he's a guy that, let's say, for sake of argument, he doesn't give up a run and the Mets don't score. At least he'd be like another long reliever. I mean, look at what Hauser has done. Why couldn't Budo do the same thing? I mean, again, I also think that there needs to be something to be said for major league experience. I think that, just kind of calling a guy up just because you have no other options, he's never pitched in the big leagues before, I just don't really think that's the best course of action.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into how I would kind of configure this pitching staff. But first, obviously, let's go to the series rundown of what has gone on in this series. Now, it started off pretty great. It started off with a good offensive performance all around. The Mets scored 7 runs, did not get much distance from Quintana. We'll talk about him later. But Lindor, a 2-hit game, run batted in. Alvarez with another run batted in, a tying home run by Taylor. And then you also had home runs from Alonso and McNeil. Surprise, surprise, in the 6th inning to kind of seal this one up. The Mets bullpen went 5 scoreless innings. You had 2 scoreless innings from Daniel Nunez. And they were able to wrap up the 7-2 win. In the second game, Tyler McGill went 5 1/3, but it was not enough. Tons of walks, as per usual, which has been a problem. Not great pitch execution, which earned him a option down to AAA the following day. 2-hit game for Lindor. Nimmo with a run batted in, 2 runs batted in by Alonso. You had a home run from Vientos, a 3-hit game by Jose Iglesias, and another RBI by Bader. It was a complete meltdown by Framber Valdez at the beginning of the year of the game, but the Astros eventually came back, scoring 8 unanswered runs to complete a 6-1 comeback and to tie up the series at 1. And the series finale that happened just moments ago. You got 7 innings from Severino. Wasn't amazing, but he did get dinked and dunked. Lots of soft contact against him that kind of killed him. And his pitch count was low, but started to lose a little bit of effectiveness towards the end there. 2-run double by Vientos to get the Mets within 2, and a game-tying home run by Nimmo in the 7th inning to tie the game at 4. But then later on in the bottom of the 9th, we had a long, and I mean long, rain delay, and we came back to some sorrows. We went to extra innings. Adam Ottavino gave up the ghost runner. The ghost runner was then scored off by the Mets on an RBI double by Nimmo. Another great game for him. He had a great series. And then Matt Festa was thrown into the fire, gave up 5 runs in the top of the 11th inning, and that pretty much buried the Mets and buried their hopes to win this series, as a very taxed bullpen, as we've said already, loses this one. Now, as for the Mets and this entire series, the full-on takeaways all around. I mean, we're going to get into the pitching, obviously, because it's been the main topic. But everybody all the way around the diamond, what are your main takeaways from this one, Frank? How do you feel? I think you're muted, I believe.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about the Mets bullpen, but on the flip side, looking at the Astros bullpen is very interesting because, here's a Mets offense that's coming in red hot, was still able to put out good run totals, but did it against good Houston starting pitching in Blanco and Framber Valdez. But then once the bullpen came in for Houston, all of a sudden the Mets were getting shut down. And then you go into the third game of the series where the Astros are going with a bullpen game. And for the majority of the game, the Mets offense was getting shut down. Outside of Vientos getting a big hit and Brandon Nimmo absolutely carrying the team in that last game, the Mets offense don't have anything to show against the Astros pen. And yes, the Astros pen does have some nice pieces. Obviously, Scott is great. Josh Hader, one of the best closers in baseball. There's no denying that. But still, you just find that, Scott worked all 3 days of this series. And he had, a 20 pitch outing followed up by today was another plus 20 pitch outing. So, nowadays you don't see relievers go 3 days in a row. So, just the way Houston was able to get so much out of their bullpen compared to what happened with the Mets just totally having meltdowns these past 2 days, it was just a big difference as far as seeing that. And I think seeing Francisco Alvarez have the hitless game on the second day, that kind of really stood out because he's just been swinging such a hot bat that it's like when he's not going right in that middle portion, it can be tough for them to really keep things going. I feel like he's kind of that connector right in the middle, like as you have like your top 4, and then after that you have your Vientos and company. So kind of having Alvarez right in the middle to kind of balance that out, I think is obviously very critical to this lineup. But overall, I mean, I'm with everybody else. The DJ Stewart experiment, like that's got to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm done with it.
Finish it up. Yeah.
As far
Wrap
as
it
like
up.
we talk so much about value, tools, what can you bring to this table? And right now, Stewart is, it's a lazy comparison, but more and more it is looking more like a Vogelback in the sense where his best attribute is drawing walks. But with lack of speed, he's not really doing anything with those walks. And I just don't understand how he keeps ending up in right field. He had a couple of plays where he was able to make the play, but he was very close to not making the play. And the reluctance to put Brandon Nimmo in right field, I understand the arm concerns, but I do find that interesting. I tweeted that. To me, I think the Brett Beatty thing in AAA, I'm not going to overreact because he does this every time he's sent down there. But I'm more willing to, with Starling Marte being hurt, I'm more willing to have Brett Beatty be a guy that can make some spot starts in the outfield, can make some spot starts at second base or what have you, and just kind of see what you get. I feel there is more upside, particularly with the power. I feel like that's something that'd be kind of nice to see compared to Stewart. It's just I feel like his power is so it comes and goes. Like he does have power, but I feel like I see it once a month or something like that. You know, I just feel like it's just like once every couple of weeks he may get a hold of one, but for the most part, you're just not seeing much happening when it comes to DJ Stewart at the plate. So, and I think that someone like Tyrone Taylor, he's had some big hits, he's hit some home runs. But I like him a lot more in a traditional fourth outfield role, late game defensive replacement,
Same.
pinch runner, pinch hitter against left-handed pitching. I don't love how many opportunities he has with runners on base. I feel like there's just way too
He
many
shouldn't be
times.
batting as high as he is in the
He
lineup.
isn't. That's what I've been saying. He bats right after Alvarez and right before Vientos, and I feel like that's a critical. And with the lineup this deep, like there's a lot of like critical spots. But I mean, this might be crazy to say, but with the way Bader has swung the bat this season, I know he's done a really good job anchoring that 9 hole. But with Marte out, I think you have to consider putting Bader higher. I would rather switch Bader and Taylor because McNeil's not giving you anything in the 8 spot anyway. So it's like, what is if they're both outs in the
Are you
bottom
sure
half?
he's not
so
coming
be it.
around? Are
He
you
is
sure he's
not.
not coming
No,
around?
I'm not gonna
Okay.
let the one home run that just barely got over the wall kind of make up for the next 2 days not
You
building
sure?
off of it. Yeah, I mean, he didn't build off it. He had 2 stinkers right after, so it ended up not really mattering. So, I mean, with the offense again, like they were still able to the final score still get close to that average that they've had through the month of June, but I just feel like there were still like those missed opportunities, and there was you're never gonna be 100% with runners on base and things like that. But I think seeing JD Martinez, like I said in my recap, but like JD Martinez going hitless, plus Lindor going hitless, and just a lot of guys not contributing that are normal contributors. That definitely was something that we're not used to seeing, and I just hope that there's not any slumps kind of taking advantage. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking at, is that they've had a lot of guys swinging really, really hot bats, and there's like that regressing to the mean and law of averages and stuff like that. So I just don't want to see any like massive cold streaks come around the corner. Easy, you do know that Tyrone Taylor has like a 637 OPS, right? Like he's not that great.
I think
I
that
mean,
he's played fairly well.
Hey,
for
wait a minute,
Marte,
wait a minute, wait a
yeah.
minute. He has an OPS plus under 100. The guy's not even average offensively. I said he's had some good moments. He's had some nice home runs, but he's been a below average offensive player. Point blank. I mean, that's that.
Listen, I get it. I get it. And listen, I think that, with Taylor, he's bottom third of the lineup. Like, you should be batting 8th or 7th or whatever, especially with Bader hitting as well as he has. I really have concerns as to it's not really like Alonso per se, but I feel like there's a few situations where I like how they set things up, and then I don't like how they set things up, and you kind of see a mixture of how this lineup kind of reacts to pitching. Sometimes they work the count, sometimes they're first pitch swinging, sometimes they are just look completely overmatched. And I feel like that's kind of going to be a way as to where they're not going to be able to string these hits together eventually, and it's going to start, regressing to the means, as we would say, or something. I think that when you just look at, the Mets lineup in general, again, I don't know how long this is going to last. Maybe they become cold in July. Who knows? The Mets offense has been good. I think that Taylor has done a fine job since Marte left, but it's like when you look at the Mets offense, you need things to kind of just flow like it has. And, these last 2 games have been a little bit frustrating as to some of the timely hitting, but they're still scoring, so I'm not going to go after them that much. I think that when you look at the Mets as a whole, they are just getting killed. And I mean killed by just a lot of not really an individual, but a lot of team miscues and a lot of things where something's getting clogged in the other side, and then one other side it's not working, and then the other one it's not even just like, we're saying like the delay killing the Mets momentum. I feel like there's just a lot of loose ends as to what has been going on with the Mets. These, like, just like in this series, and it's finally catching up to them towards the end here. I think that when they will do fine in DC. Will they win 3 out of 4? Maybe. Will they win all 4? Probably not. But I think that when you look at the Mets as a whole, there's a lot of things that need to flow right. And you're really asking a lot for a team that is really shorthanded, for a team that, it does have a lot deeper of a lineup. You've had a lot of contributors, but you're going to have to see a lot more timely hitting than that. And personally, I do have some concerns with the extra innings hitting a little bit, even though Nimmo did tie it up in the bottom of the 10th. I do have a little bit of concerns with that because I feel like this team really freezes with that runner on second a lot. But when I just look at the Mets as a whole, they really need to just get into these grooves. It's just, they really need to get into a groove of, I mean, is it just like the hitting is contagious? Is it just like the hitting is just needs to flow right? But for some reason, the doors just fall open, the floodgates open when one goddamn bad thing happens. Like, they didn't get a hit for almost, what was it? Like, almost 6 innings.
Yeah.
Like, they got their first hit today was in the 6th. And I'm not trying to knock the Mets offense. It's been fine. It was Nimmo. Yeah. Nimmo broke up the no-hitter. He tied the game. Yeah. And he also tied the game in, like, he was the only one who kind of showed up. When you say in this last game, he was the only one that showed up. I think that, I've grown to grow on the Ghost Runner and kind of like,
listen, this bullpen needs the Ghost Runner desperately.
But the problem is that this bullpen's not built for it. They're not built for it. So when you allow a lot of base runners, when you allow a lot of choke jobs on 0-2 counts, it's not going to be a recipe to win in these extra inning games. And you're not going to have that many extra inning games. I get that. But with these situations, and that goes back to a lot of the coaching as well. We can talk about Jeremy Hefner. With a lot of these high leverage situations, it seems like they just don't seem like they're up to finish the task. They get there, they get close, they get to 2 strikes, and then they just start dancing around in their head, and for some reason they just can't finish it off. And that is one thing that it's going to burn out. It's going to burn out eventually. Like, you can't rely on this so much, especially with this bullpen being as taxed as it is. You can't rely on, I just got these outs, so it's going to happen every single time. And the problem with this is that when the Mets walk these batters, when they give up free base runners, they extend the inning, it's going to catch up to you. Whether you get out of it or not, it's eventually going to catch up to you. And that's what happened to Jake Diekman. That's what happened to Reed Garrett. Matt Festa doesn't even belong here. That's beside the point. He doesn't even belong here. Had no business being on here. I feel bad for the guy, to be honest, to just be thrown in the fire. He's going to get DFA'd tomorrow. We know that's going to happen. Right now, they're in a situation where there's a lot of wing and a prayer. And they have to be in the wing and a prayer because of how many guys they have out and how many inconsistencies they have had and kind of just the trend of how this team has been, whether it's offensively or defensively or as a pitching staff. And speaking of what I would do ideally, of how I would kind of form up this pitching staff, because how the Mets have obviously proven them towards pitching is the bullpen is taxed. The starting pitching cannot go through. They can't get to the 6th inning. They can't give you any length. Occasionally, you'll get maybe 7 innings from Severino. Maybe you get 6 innings from Quintana. Occasionally, we'll get into him. But here's how I would look at this. Obviously, this is all the healthy options, so I have to exclude Bryce Montes de Oca. I have to exclude Shintaro Fujinami. This is how I would look at it. But it's not really as much as the players. It's more of just how I would form the pitching staff. I want to extend the entire starting rotation with all the options that they have, so we can stop also just complaining about this guy should be up and this guy shouldn't be up. So here's how I would kind of form it here. Obviously, you're going to have to do the 5-man rotation as of right now without Kodai Senga here. Is it possible that maybe some of these guys would do better at a 6-man rotation? Sure, we've already explained this before, but this is the situation you're in. The Mets, with how many times they have seen blowups in early games, they have come to the point where they need 3 long men in this pen. And I would give that to Hauser. Obviously, he's already been doing it. I would give it to Sean Manaea, who's been a reliever before, and then obviously Tyler McGill, who obviously had to be optioned to AAA. Then you can put Danny Young in there. If they have him back, they have him back. Who knows if he stays there? Dinel Nunez has earned his spot here. Reed Garrett is here. And then there's an insert right there of a AAA piece that obviously would be the placeholder for Senga whenever he comes back. Now, whether that is Bryce Montes de Oca, whether it is a Wilkin Ramos from AAA, whether that is somebody else who's there, whether you have Tyler J as a third lefty there as a matchup guy, it does not matter. That guy would obviously be optioned down to AAA, or he would just be the insert for Senga, who's going to need a 6-man rotation when he comes back. Now, obviously, the potential transactions that would have to happen is Christian Scott getting called up from AAA, and that is most likely going to happen on Thursday. So you don't need to see that as a fantasy. You also have to call up Budo, of course, because I would put him in the rotation because he's proven that he's been able to give you distance. Jake Diekman and Adam Ottavino got to go in this scenario because they have been one of the epitomes as to why this team has not been able to do well in these high leverage situations, and he's been one of the main reasons as to why these games have been a lot closer. Lots of walks from Jake Diekman. He's aging. He hasn't been able to get the ball over the plate. His stuff is still there. I think it is. But he just has no control over it. He doesn't know where the ball is going, and neither does Adam Ottavino at this point. His velo is down. We've already talked about his stuff last episode. And then, obviously, Edwin Diaz would have to be reinstated from suspension for all of this to happen. So this is obviously just the healthy options only. You have Senga, who is going to come back eventually. Hopefully, there's no setbacks whatsoever. Diaz comes back from suspension. You could insert Bryce Montes de Oca in there. You could insert somebody like Shintaro Fujinami if you think he's ready. But that's kind of how I would form this thing together. They need 3 long men in that bullpen because I am tired of giving Dinel Nunez 2 innings to nearly kill himself as the young arm that he is, with all of the high ceiling that he has proven that he can have at the major league level. I'm tired of it. They can't do this anymore. Use that quality depth. Use that quantity depth to your advantage and fill out the bullpen with it. Because it's not like you have any options in right now, currently in the bullpen, that can fill it out. I know this for a fact because we've had to fill out our bullpen today with Tyler J and Matt Festa. So I know that they could do that with the shorthanded bullpen that they have. And again, this is not about who I would put in the bullpen because there's some interchangeable moves that you can make. Absolutely. That's not what I'm focusing on. What I'm saying is expand the rotation because they can't handle it past 5 innings. Tie up the loose ends. Stop saying that this guy should just be a reliever. This guy should just be a starter. And if he's only a starter, he has to be optioned down to AAA. Manaya's been a reliever before. Hauser's been great out of the bullpen. And Tyler McGill, we haven't really seen him much as a reliever. I'm pretty sure he was a reliever in like 2022 or something. Didn't go well. He wasn't healthy. Whatever. That's the only one where he's in AAA right now. You can ramp him up to be a reliever. That's how I would look at it. I'm not putting Joey Lucchesi in the equation. I just don't think that he's a good option. I don't think he's a major league pitcher. I personally just don't. But when you look at it, the Mets, they need to tie up the loose ends here because without Senga as of right now, they are bleeding. They are bleeding from getting innings. And I am tired of putting the Matt Festas out there. I'm tired of putting the Tyler Jays out there. They have no business being out there. They're not major league pitchers. And they need to use this quantity to their advantage and stop saying, oh, well, let's win the AAA championship in Syracuse. That doesn't mean shit. We're trying to win at the major league level right now. Frank, what would you think about that formula? Because obviously I did ask people in the chat, too, of if they would put 3 long relief arms in the Mets bullpen due to the lack of volume from starters. 94% of you guys are saying yes. Frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I agree with a couple of chats about like Adcock. I think Adcock deserves
Put
to be
in there. You can do that too.
Like that's fine. A couple of things is that unfortunately, like I always talk about the realistic portion of it. As much as I'm in full agreement with you. DFA, Otto, and Diekman. I've been saying that for weeks. We agree on that. Me and you 100% there. But we know that in Major League world, in contract world, that's both are not going to go down at the same time imminently. Yeah. So that's the first problem. It's just that like I just don't see those two guys going. There's a couple other parts that I'm looking at. Number one, the battle, and it's not really so much a battle because it's kind of by default here, but it's like the Manaea versus Peterson aspect of it, where I'm like, even though Manaea has had his volume issues, I get it. Peterson's just not a better pitcher, though. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Yeah. Is that I'm like, if I think the starter it has a bigger impact on the bullpen compared to vice versa. So for me, it's like, let me have my best options out there every 5 days. So I would be looking at Manaea and Peterson, maybe flip-flopping. And then as far as McGill, I'm just kind of done with him, to be honest. I just don't see it. I mean, whether it's starter or reliever, it just feels like it's always something. If it's not the walks, it's the hits. If it's not the hit, it's just he's not putting hitters away. I'm just not seeing a game plan. I'm just not seeing the results. And, Peterson has been the beneficiary of a lot of run support. But for McGill, I think whether he's a starter or reliever, I don't see it really having much of a difference.
Yeah, I feel and again, like this is not like the guys that I have placed in here. You can make as many interchangeable moves as you can. I just would put, I need to have 8 like convertive starters on this team because they obviously can't handle these innings. They just can't.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they definitely do need some extra long man. So, and again, but when you have Scott in the rotation and you put Budo in the rotation as well, that's kind of where you're left at. It's like, okay, well, you have to use McGill. Like, you're going to have to use those names. It's just a matter of what order you want to do. It's like, okay, which ones are the starters and which ones are the relievers? But like we've talked about with the other injuries, those are kind of the names that you're working with. So then it just comes down to how do you want to utilize them. I'm just giving
you what's available. What's available. I mean, like when you look at this, like the best available or like what is available, I'm not putting Quintana in my rotation. We're going to talk about Quintana. Yeah. Like I'm not voluntarily saying, oh, this is my starting pitcher for. This is what they're working with right now. Like that's the healthy options. So that's how I kind of look at it. And of course, like, Senga is a different story. I mean, like maybe there is a point where Brandon Sproats, slides into that rotation towards the end of the year. I don't think it will. Tidwell's kind of struggled as well. So, I mean, we'll see what happens there. But I think there's a lot of moves that do need to be made. And it's not just, let's just bring this arm up because he has a heartbeat. I think it really needs to be more of, they need to work with what they have, but also put themselves in a situation where they tie up these loose ends because they can't be putting 1 inning relievers out there for 2 innings and expecting them to go back-to-back days on top of that. It just can't happen. You're going to kill them. They're almost dead. I mean, they're already dead. They're 81 games into this season, and they're already nearly dead. And like you can always say that, the Met, like these players are, they're too fragile or whatever. This is just how the game is now. And I get it. You can also tell me, most starting pitchers go 5 innings, but it's like we don't really have 5-inning guys. Some of these guys get knocked out in the 3rd inning. There's been multiple, and I mean so many times. I don't know, 1 every 8 starts, we see a guy get knocked out in the 3rd inning or in the 4th inning. That's a lot of relief work. That's using like probably your entire staff if you're talking about just 1-inning relievers. They haven't been able to get the innings, so get the innings from guys who can go multiple innings. We've already seen Tyler McGill only last like 3 innings. So might as well use those 3 innings in relief. It's really tough. Just saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, like you said, that's just where they're at. That's what they're working with. So it puts them just in a really bad situation no matter how you do it. And right now, it's like they still have to wait another however many games it is for Diaz to be in there. And so no matter what, they're still also going to be a roster spot short. So there's still that piece of it as well. And it's like I've said, is that I understand the positive stance of, okay, well, Senga's going to enter the rotation and Scott's going to enter the rotation and the rotation's going to be better. And I get that part, but it's like I said, when Senga's working back from an injury and Scott has an innings limit, they're not going to solve your issue of, okay, these guys are going to go 6 innings, 7 innings, maybe more. That's not going to happen. Even if they are pitching well, they're still going to be very cautious with these guys because of they don't want them to get hurt. So that's where even if you did that, you're still going to need those rest of innings to be eaten up by other arms. So, I mean, even that stance, that doesn't totally solve the issue either. So that's where they're really stuck. And again, using 3 long relievers is not ideal. It's not common.
It isn't.
But it's the only option right now because you're seeing what's happening, and and it's like we say, they're really just kind of playing this game of like who, like you say, like who's not dead today kind of thing. Like who's alive that we could actually use today, because
let's spin the wheel.
Yeah, you kind of go into the game, you're like, oh, I know I don't have Nunez, I know I don't have Garrett, I know I don't have Hauser, so it's like, if Ottavino, or in this case, like with Festa, it was like, if Festa doesn't have it, oh well, I don't have Adcock, like, this is just what I'm going to go with. If it doesn't work, oh well. Like, you don't have those other options that you could really utilize because of how it's been.
This is just the situation that they're in, and I think that they have yet to really completely accept it. I think that they're trying a little bit here, but they're waiting for it to marinate a little bit. But it's starting to bleed here, and they're in the pivotal point as to where they got to this stretch in June where they have been winning ball games, and they're only 2 games out of the wild card. I mean, every game counts here. Like, every game is important if you're trying to compete. I think that, with the pieces that they have right now, it's really stitching together only one good outcome. Everything really needs to go right with something like 3 long men in the bullpen, 3 guys who were regularly starters. It's just to tie up them a lot more loose ends. You don't have to plan ahead to the next day, which I haven't really seen Mendoza really do that. And sometimes it costs them, but, if you have to win a game, you have to win a game. We've seen a lot of Mets managers kind of try to save this reliever for the next one, or try to be too many steps ahead or and then they're too many steps behind the next day. It's just come to a point where they need to tie it up, and they have the resources to do it with the starting rotation options they have that are really just rotting away in AAA halfway through the season. I mean, let's be real. Christian Scott should have never been sent down. Jose Butto probably should have never been sent down, or maybe he needed an extra day of rest at least or something, because he's been pitching fairly well in AAA. Like, I think it's come to a point where you got to use the starting pitching depth to kind of aid the bullpen, because the bullpen in this entire organization right now, at this current moment at 9:33 p.m. on June the 30th, you have about 5 major league relievers in this entire organization right now that are available. Like that's how bad. And then most of them have been working multiple innings throughout this week. I mean, you're in a really tough spot right now. So you got to make some of these starters into long relievers, because it's not going to do anything with them just rotting away in AAA. The championship for the Syracuse Mets doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter. And even though Syracuse has been good, they're a good team. They're a real good team. You know, I'm sure it's a great team to see. They need help. They need help in the major leagues, and that's what really matters right now. So they need to tie this up as to where, you know, this guy doesn't go deep into the game. He gets backed up by another starter. They need a high leverage piece that can be a high leverage piece in Nunez, who I believe should be considered a high leverage reliever now. They have Nunez. Diaz obviously has to come back. It's a whole different story. But as for the Mets pitching staff, I want to shift over to Jose Quintana. Now, we did talk about Sean Manaea's volume issues quite a few weeks ago, of what the Mets should possibly do, of maybe moving him to the bullpen. I think that they should do that as of right now, mainly just because we just have not been able to get volume. He's been one of the reasons why. But another reason has been kind of the inconsistent year of Jose Quintana. Now, if we were to look at what we're looking for, it hasn't been a bad year for Quintana. If you were to look at his game logs, he's laboring. It hasn't been bad. It hasn't been horrendous. He's just not giving you any distance whatsoever. He's been one of the main reasons as to why this bullpen has been taxed. Him and Sean Manaea have been two of the main reasons as to why. With Jose Quintana, it's also a different story. Not much strikeout stuff whatsoever. If you were to look at it, Father Time is catching up, and it is undefeated. It really has not been a good year for Jose Quintana. And it's easy to nitpick a back-end starter. He is not perfect whatsoever. And to be honest, he hasn't even had that horrible of a year for a back-end starter. It's overall just the volume, the effectiveness, the walks are up. He's giving up a lot of base runners, and he's creating a lot of traffic in front of him as to where his pitch count is pretty much at 60 in the second inning, which just cannot happen. Now, obviously, Quintana, I don't believe he will be effective as a reliever, obviously, with the stuff that he has. Overall, he's never been somebody who throws hard, but he's kind of in that all-time low in fastball velocity as to where if he doesn't command it, he doesn't locate it properly, he's not going to get any results whatsoever. And if you're looking at it in terms of volume, it has been one of the big problems out of the entire league, not just on the Mets pitching staff, as Jose Quintana has pitched 82.2 innings, which is the least amount of innings among all qualified MLB starters this year. And he's also posting a career worst in home runs per 9. The home runs have been way up for him. Strikeout rate, chase rate, called strike and whiff rate, which is a measure of control and command. Hard hit rate is way up. Whiff rate is way down. And a lot more fly balls, as to somebody who's been able to put the ball on the ground a lot. And of course, even though his changeup has been fairly good, he's been able to locate it well, and not to mention his curveball, as to where the VAA, obviously vertical approach angle, we talk about this all the time, makes or breaks careers. It's the best way to get chases. he hasn't been able to get chases whatsoever. And even though his four seam has never been that good, and he has a decent amount of induced vertical break on it and a decent amount of vertical approach angle as well, hovering around 4, less than 5, that's fine. You're still seeing a lot of command issues, and that obviously bodes well with opponents holding a 367 expected on base average, which is quality of contact, against Quintana's four seam fastball. And obviously the big number that is the lowest there on his 2024 notes, something that he's always been very good at during his career. This year, not so much. He has surrendered more home runs, 13 this year in 2024, than 2022 and 2023 combined, which is 12. This is through 16 starts this year. He just has not been effective whatsoever. And when you look at the positional versatility as to where I'm talking about how I would always be prepared and tie up these loose ends, Quintana is the only pitcher I look at it where you're just stuck. You're stuck. You can't move him to the bullpen. He's not going to be effective enough in the bullpen whatsoever. Maybe to give you length, but he's not going to strike anyone out in high leverage situations. He's a low leverage type of arm, which I don't want to have at all. I think that that's pretty much useless if you can't pitch in these situations, or, and you've also have this whole, if you want to dive in a little bit more of it with Quintana, where he's kind of had these reverse splits against lefties. Lefties have been killing him this year. Righties have been good against him, not as much, but still it just has not been consistent. Last year, Quintana has been able to give us quality last year. I think they should have traded him at the deadline at his highest value. That was something, because they did have interest in him. Water under the bridge now. Like that's 2020 is hindsight. But the problem here is you're kind of stuck in the matter with Jose Quintana, where you don't have any other options to add into this starting rotation if you were to have 3 long men in the bullpen. This is obviously with hypotheticals, because they have not done that yet. Frank, how would you treat this with Jose Quintana? Because, to be honest, and I'm going to use the brutally honest button, because we are brutally honest here. Quintana this year, straight up, let me just say, has been a turd. Literally, that's been it's literally just straight up throwing crap out there and hopefully it sticks to the wall. He's had a few good starts. It's not like he's been completely awful, but he's just laboring out there. He just can't go deep into the game, and it's tough to watch. It's a tough sell to put this guy in your rotation right now.
Yeah, I mean that's the big key, is the tough watch part. I've been saying this since opening day. I've had a lot of concerns with him, and really he's just another one of these guys where the walks, they really kill him. The one thing that he has going in his favor is that his last 3 starts have been his biggest strikeout results. So,
Yes.
3 starts go against San Diego, 6. Last start against Chicago, 8. This start against Houston, 7. All of his other starts, you're looking at 4 strikeouts and below. So that's been the one positive. But the problem is that, if you say to me, okay, well, Jose Quintana in his last start, he gave up 2 runs and he had 7 strikeouts. I'd be like, oh, that sounds like a pretty good start. But he only went 4 innings. And it's like, why did he go 4 innings? Because it took him 93 pitches to get through those 4 innings. And you're just not going to push him more than that, especially a guy who's a bit on the older side. He had just thrown 103 pitches against Chicago the start before that. So, it's just a very, you said, a tough sell, a tough watch. But it comes down to where, since his stuff is, there's just not much there, that, like you said, he's laboring. Every at-bat's a long at-bat. Even if there is success in the results in a strikeout, it takes so many pitches to get there. And far too often, it is the walks, and it is the 3-2 count. And just those kind of at-bats, just hitter after hitter, it adds up. And then you find yourself in a situation where you can only get 4 innings. Now, the previous 2 starts, he had 6 1/3 innings and a 6-inning outing. So that was encouraging. But you still feel like you're always a strong possibility that you can be looking at a 4 inning start, because before those 2 6 innings, you had a 3 and 2/3, you had a 4 inning start, and then a 4 inning start again yesterday. And we talk so much about, oh well, the common thing is that starters go 5 innings. Well, if you're most of the time getting four out of him, that makes it even tougher, because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now that's another inning every 5 days that the bullpen needs to cover when they already have Tyler McGill not being able to go deep into games, and David Peterson and Sean Manaea. So he just adds on to it. And if you had, and that's the thing that it really comes down to, is that if he was the only guy that was doing this, and if he was only giving up a couple of runs and he wasn't going deep into games, it wouldn't be as much of a problem if the whole entire rotation wasn't doing it as well. So I think that when you look at the overall fit for what it does for the team, it definitely is a big concern. But like we've talked about, because of the other struggles, it's not as simple as just, oh, take him out when Sanga's ready. Oh, just put Christian Scott
Yeah.
up because of the McGill getting sent down already. So it's like he's already been deemed as the odd man out. He's the first one to go. I think David Peterson is next. I mean, we'll see what happens in
Yeah.
Washington. Like I said, anything can happen, because again, I think Pearson is no one of these guys who, since he's been the benefit of the big time run support, the Mets aren't losing those games. And I feel like if you were looking at it where you're like, oh, well, every time Peterson pitches, the Mets are losing, it'd be a lot quicker, much stronger, like, oh, he needs to go. And I also feel that as a pitcher, you approach your games differently when you have big run support and you have big leads, especially for a guy like David Pearson who has the walk problem. So if I know I have an 8 run lead, I could throw more strikes and put a lot more plate on my pitches and just kind of rely on the defense behind me. But if I'm in a tight game, then I need to resort to the nibbling, as we call it, and the trying to paint and trying to perfect my pitches and try to hit certain spots, which he's not capable of doing. And he's another guy, at least, to the high amount of walks. So I feel like since McGill is already gone, you can't like immediately have another guy just go. So like you said, they are stuck with him. It is a tough watch every 5 days. You never know what you're going to get. You can get 4 innings of 4 runs, or you can get 6 innings of 2 runs. It could happen at any start. So you're kind of always stuck in that position. And like we said, that's where it becomes hard as a manager to game plan his starts, because you don't know which version of Quintana you're going to get. But the one thing you can count on is that he's going to throw a ton of pitches and you're going to have a lot of long at bats. So, I mean, that's just kind of what happens every start. And he's going to walk at least 2 batters pretty much, or more. So he's just had a really interesting season, because he had a stretch in May where 3 starts in a row, he didn't walk a single batter. But then you fast forward into June, then he has 3 walks, 2 walks, 2 walks, and he had 3 walks on a Saturday as well. So that's where you're again just in a tough spot, because you just can't game plan for him, because you don't know what version you're getting.
Yeah, and obviously that's the better way to just like, again, like I've said, tie up the loose ends where you can have somebody that can back up somebody like Quintana, who, can kind of, you know, manufacture some of those innings in long relief, and you can go to the high leverage guys. Because again, Peterson has been able to go a little bit deeper as compared to guys like Quintana or Manaea, in the sense that, they give us a decent amount of volume. He's also gotten a lot of run support, like we've said. But I think when you look at it from Quintana's standpoint, he doesn't really have much of a redeeming qualities as compared to somebody like Manaea, who, when he makes the right pitch, and it's going to take a while for him to rate the right pitch, he's going to get the swing and miss. We know he can possibly do that. David Peterson hasn't done it fairly well, but we know he has the put away slider when it's right. McGill, lots of strikeouts this year. Hasn't been able to get that going. But he has shown to give you volume if he's on a roll. With Jose Quintana, like we've talked about him being the 5 and fly guy, there's not really much redeeming with him unless he's able to locate, which he obviously has not been able to do. Command has not been grading out fairly well. Stuff has been declining. Let's be real for a second. I mean, he's at career lows. If you want to just talk about pure velocity, every single one of his pitches are at career lows right now in velocity, whether you're talking about his curveball or his changeup. And I don't think it is all pure velocity. Like, pure velocity has never been something that I really desperately need. It's an enhancement as to what makes stuff better, but pitch shape is what you need. You need to make pitches. You need a mixture of it, of course. Like when Frank says, why are we bringing in these guys to throw 93 miles an hour? Obviously, he means a little bit more when you say that, obviously, but it's like, when you have 93 miles an hour and you're not able to make these pitches, you're going to get clobbered. And when you have Matt Festa coming in here and throwing like all these meatballs, it's not going to be able to, it's a way stuff plays. Stuff is able to, you're able to apply that. Obviously, command, very important as well. It can be just as important as stuff, but Jose Quintana, as he continues to get older, is it really going to get any better at any point where he needs pinpoint command to be effective? It's just, it's not starter stuff anymore if he's just only able to lift it towards 4 innings. Like, his contract is not bad. It's $13 million. That is nothing for a starting pitcher which comes at a premium now. But $13 million for an opener, like I've said, with him out there on the mound, it's a tough sell. It's a real tough sell. And I mean, I've already said this already, the last point, and then you can cap it off here, and then we'll move on. But the last point I just want to make is, and everybody probably can attest to this now, he's so goddamn boring. He puts you to sleep. He puts you, like, he doesn't do anything exciting. There's nothing nice. Like, with Quintana, you can literally, last year I was able to pretty much go on my phone and chill on it while he was pitching, because, yeah, he's boring, but he was getting outs. He was able to give you some innings, give you some quality. But now, you're not getting that from him. And now it's a massive, massive problem. So, whether it's stuff, whether it's control, what's command, pitch sequencing, which we talked about with other hitters, other pitchers, excuse me, it's just not a good formula. And I think that there's not enough redeeming qualities as to call Quintana a reliable starter as of right now, which is tough to think about because you're stuck with him. You're stuck with him in this position. The only way that I see it of them completely solving these problems of volume issues, Senga coming back doesn't solve it. It doesn't solve it because he's going to need a 6-man rotation. He needs that extra day of rest. The only way I see it solving is one of the prospects comes up here and breaks out. And whether that is going to be Tidwell, I don't know. Hamill hasn't been good at AAA. Whether it is Sproat, it's going to take a while for that to happen. And during the process, we're just going to be stuck with Quintana every single 5 days. And I'm not saying that the offense can't bail him out every single time, because the offense has been fairly good. And we'll get into the offense, and not to mention the main source of the offense this year. But it's becoming a liability. He's really becoming a liability as to, it's not just what are you going to get, is this guy going to last long enough to put us in a position where the bullpen doesn't completely melt down, that is already taxed, already hurt, already shorthanded. It's just putting us in a really, really tough position. And yes, Minaya has done this too. Yes, McGill has been a problem, and he was sent down for that. But they need volume out of this rotation, and you're going to need to take out the one that gives you the least amount of chance, and I think Quintana is that guy, based on the stuff he has. Anything else?
Yeah, I think, on the bullpen side, when I talk about the 93 mile-an-hour guys, if you're going to be missing your spots, it's a lot easier to get away with it and still potentially get a whiff at 98 than it is at 93. Like, it gives you more room for error when you are missing your spots, which this team does plenty of, especially in the bullpen. So, that's just kind of what we're looking for, is that it's able to, as we say, like, cover up some things. And with a guy like Quintana, like I say, if you don't have velocity, and you don't have command, like what do you have? And it
Yeah.
feels like that case with a lot of guys just in the rotation and the bullpen. It's like, well, what is it that is kind of excelling? Like what's going to be that out pitch? That's really what it comes down to. Is that's what leads to, even if you do have a good amount of strikeouts or you don't give up a lot of runs, every at bat is still long and draining and boring because you don't have the put away pitch, because it's like every at bat there's a few foul balls, and it's just like if you're going 5 pitches, 7 pitches each at bat, it adds up, and then before you know it, it's like, oh, my pitch count, I gotta leave now, bye guys, good luck bullpen, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pitch count will always be the main factor as to this, because that's just kind of how it is measured. I mean, 100 pitches, you kind of want to keep it at that limit, because this is a very injured position. And even with that pitch limit of 100 pitches, you still have these injuries. I mean, it's just that's how severe it is. And even though Quintana has been relatively healthy, that's the only redeeming quality he really has overall as an entire player, as a human, as somebody who exists right now on this roster. What he brings to the field is he's healthy. That's it. He's out there every 5 days. And that goes into the situation of, that goes into the realm of like Patrick Corbin type of stuff, right? Patrick Corbin's been terrible for the past years. And listen, Quintana's way better than Patrick Corbin. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is the only redeeming quality of Patrick Corbin as compared to somebody like, Steven Strasburg, who has not even, I mean, he basically hurt himself into retirement. He basically killed himself for that World Series title. He's out there every 5 days, Corbin. Corbin's out there. He's healthy. He's always out there. That's the only redeeming quality. And I think that even though health is hard to come by with pitchers, because how it is so injured, this position, you got to make the sacrifice eventually as to where this guy is not putting us in a good position to win. He is not going deep into games, and he has not been effective. He just hasn't been what he was last year. And personally, like I said, at the highest value when they were sellers, I would have moved on from him and, allowed some of these younger guys to kind of take more of a grasp at, a starting pitching position, such as Budo, who doesn't need to be sent down because Jose Quintana is here, or such as, Christian Scott, who needs to be sent down because, this guy is out of options, or this guy. I feel like you have to make the sacrifice eventually, but it's just you need a balance of quantity and quality. You haven't gotten that from Jose Quintana whatsoever. It just hasn't been a thing all year. And with him being an expiring free agent, the clock should be ticking. Like I don't see them in a postseason stretch where every game counts. You can't put Jose Quintana on the mound every 5 days. It just can't happen. And it'll happen. I mean, maybe it helps with a 6-man rotation when Senga comes back. Takes a little pressure off of any of these guys, because Senga is supposed to be their top guy. But I'm not going to rely on that when it's a almost 36-year-old Jose Quintana. Like, sometimes you got to cut the ties, right? I mean, you got to bite the bullet. And Quintana, I feel like, is the next one to do that. Even though the next starting pitching transaction that is made will probably be David Peterson. Now, I don't like David Peterson that much. We all know. But I'm a little bit more confident with him on the mound than Jose Quintana at this current point, right? I like him better than Joey Lucchesi. I'm not really confident with putting him on the mound every 5 days, including Sean Manaea, who struggles to get through 5 innings, including somebody like Tyler McGill, who struggles to get through 5 innings, including somebody like even Severino, who you still have the injury concern with. You still will always have injury concern, because it's been like that. Even though he's been able to stay healthy, these occasional blow-ups can't be daily blow-ups. It just can't happen. Jose Quintana is one of the main reasons as to why. And we are going, and that's what this was the point of Priest is saying that, we're going to lose so many games coming up due to the pitching depth. And this is true. But I would also utilize that pitching depth. That was the segment we just had quite a few minutes ago where I talked about kind of utilizing that pitching depth and making some of them relievers and kind of deepening it so you can kind of tag along some of these starters. But, and again, I think that when you're just getting like next to nothing from a starting pitcher, like, I don't know, 5 times out of 6 times, it's you cut your losses. Again, the only advantage he has is that he's healthy. That's it. And you'd think that that's enough, but when it's putting him the bullpen in such a shitty spot, it just can't happen. It really can't. Anything else you want to add? And then we'll go on to the Mets as to what has been positive, especially in June. And I want to talk about the Mets offense, specifically being the depth of power, which they have had, which we have talked about this for multiple times, even going into this season, where we have been concerned about the lack of power in this lineup. Now, we just didn't know where it was going to come from. We knew it was going to come from Pete Alonso at will, obviously, at the 50th percentile. We knew that Pete Alonso was going to provide power because he is a power hitter. He's an established power hitter. We didn't know where it was going to come from the rest of the lineup. Maybe it is top heavy. But power personally has been quite a strength for this team this year. And I'm going to say that it's been quite a deep power impact, whether you want to look at somebody like Mark Vientos or Francisco Alvarez in the limited playing time that he has had because of his injury. We've also seen, the impact of JD Martinez as well, but the Mets are in top 10 in pretty much every single power category imaginable, whether you want to look at the counting stats of home runs or isolated power, which is slugging minus batting average, or just slugging in general. Exit velocities, they are in the top 10. Hard hit percentage, they are in the top 10. Barrel rate, they're in the top 10. XwOBA, which is, again, quality of contact, which they're able to put the bat on the ball, not only hit it hard, but they're able to lift it and put it into the sweet spot as well, and not pound it into the ground. And then, of course, XwOBA on contact, which is just strictly contact and basically just like putting the ball in play of what they've been able to do with that. Top 10 in pretty much every single one of those categories. They have had a little bit more of swing and miss, so that means that they're 11th in batted ball events, but also there are a few games behind other teams because they've had a few rain delays, a few cancellations, a few off days with the London series, so don't take that the wrong way. So if you don't like that the graphic doesn't look pretty with all green in the power ranks, I apologize, but they're 11th instead of 10th, so they're not in the top 10 in batted ball events, so I apologize. But if you're looking at the Mets power by lineup, exit velocity, max exit velocity, hard hit rate, barrel rate, all of these types of hitting tools, you can go on and on. Of course, there's other numbers I could give you, but they probably wouldn't fit on the screen. A lot of red here. And obviously, the notorious blue goes to the batting champion himself, which, again, I guess we can call an outlier on this team because he's been the only guy who consistently has not been able to get it going. DJ Stewart, of course, has been, in those top 25 percentiles, but obviously he's had a lot of streakiness. He doesn't play every day. That's kind of the story. Guys like Vientos, guys like Alvarez, guys like Lindor, who has basically exceeded all of his career power numbers this year. It's been very, very impressive as to where the Mets have been able to get tons and tons of sources of power from not just Pete Alonso, and that has been really, really big. Pete Alonso has had 17 home runs this year. That's only about, a little bit over 10% of their home run total. They've had 102 home runs, which today I believe they had another one added on by Nimmo, I think. So it's 103 now. Not much of the power production has come from Pete Alonso. He's gotten a lot of extra base hits as well, of course. But you're definitely seeing a bigger depth of power, and obviously that has been helped by a guy like JD Martinez, who's been able to protect Pete, or Pete's protecting him now. Mark Vientos has definitely had quite a breakout as well, and then adding Alvarez to that, and Lindor and Nimmo, who have been shown as, possible 30 home run threats. So you're getting a lot of power from a lot of different areas, which I think has been very, very encouraging and something that we really do need to notice because, I don't want to open up the branch of conversation, but, the best power results have not really come from Pete Alonso this year. And that is definitely a question that you do have to answer when you go into free agency with Pete Alonso. And whether you want to retain him or not, whether you want him to be a future of this team or not, it depends on how you rely on it going down the line. I mean, we've talked about Mark Vientos before. Maybe he can hit you 40 home runs because he's got ridiculous power. He's put it on display ever since he was called up this year. You don't know if it's going to happen, but right now, at the pace they're going as a team, lots of power numbers coming from a lot of guys who are not named Pete Alonso and not named Jeff McNeil, because he's not going to give you anything, even though he did get you a little bit of a nice little swing down the right field line in this series. That's obviously not going to sustain to power production. Now, and that's the funny part about it. Just quick tangent, of course, like everybody saying that Jeff McNeil is back after that horrid swing that he took to that home run ball that he had against the Astros. That was actually hilarious. But besides the point, how do you feel about this, Frank? Because we've talked about this as a concern for a long time, of the lack of power, and it seems like there's depth here. There's not prolific Braves hitters, but top 10 in a lot of categories, almost every single category in terms of power.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big one for me is looking at those max exit velos, and particularly with guys like Vientos and Alvarez. Like a lot of times, that's why they have that graphic says like highest hit balls of the game, and you're seeing like it'll have something like was like Alvarez, Vientos, or some kind of combination of the three. But when you have Alvarez at a 114 and Vientos at a 113, it's like those weren't one-time occurrences. Like you're seeing plenty of other times where it's like, okay, Vientos had another 112 and a 111. So it's like there are a lot of times where the guys are just hitting the ball well. And to me, I still feel that JD Martinez is the guy who really has changed a lot for this team. Not only what he's done for himself as far as the numbers that he's put up, being a guy that, has the OPS above 800 and doing a lot of good things, but how much he's taught the other hitters, particularly the other right-handed hitters, Vientos and Alvarez, who have been both playing extremely well. Seeing the different approaches for them, seeing them use the entire field. Alvarez has, in obviously a short sample size, he's been hitting his good share of doubles, and and so have a lot of these guys. Lindor, I mean, he's got 24 doubles this season, and a lot of them have been to lead off ball games. So, still putting yourself in scoring position is still ideal offense. It beats, like we talk about, the one base outcomes, the walks, the singles with no stolen base. So whether it's a home run, whether it's a double, they're still putting up overall good slugging, and then with the walks, leads to good OPS. They're not striking out much either, even against pretty elite pitching. I mean, today was like maybe a little bit of an outlier, but they've just been doing a lot of things well offensively. Even there was at one point with runners in scoring position, they were still like top 5 in the National League for a good chunk. So they've pretty much checked all the boxes that you want to offensively, and that's how you average 6 runs for an entire month. Not a series, not a week, but a month. Like you have to be kind of doing everything well offensively, and they've done that. And they have gotten support from unexpected pieces. Someone that stands out, Luis Torrens, has hit 3 home runs in 11 games. So that's not something that we had going in. He wasn't even on the team to begin the season. But even Tomas Nido, he hit 3 home runs in 32 games compared to McNeil, who has 4 home runs in 74 games. Right now, Mark Vientos is on a 162 pace of 40 home runs. Yes, he got hot this past week, but that's the pace he's on right now. I mean, and again, like OPS still above 900. He's hitting 295. So even as the sample size keeps getting a little bigger, his numbers are still staying at an elite caliber as far as, again, especially from that third base position. So to get that from a position that they haven't gotten it really, and it's kind of like I said in the last episode, but when you're getting that from Alvarez, again, just not normal projected positions to get that kind of output. Like most teams, when their offenses are being projected, they're not looking at the catcher having an OPS near 900. Like that's not something that happens. Only very, very select few guys can do that. Right now, Alvarez has that because he's swinging a high bat in a short sample size, but you're just seeing, again, so many guys step up. So, I mean, I love what I've seen. Brandon Nimmo, he's had a big home run uptick this month, so that's been encouraging.
Yep.
We know it's in there, and he's doing it to right field, he's doing it to left field, so there's not too much to complain about. I think the only change I'd maybe want more, like from a personnel standpoint, is it would be nice if there was a left-handed bat that was giving us a little more outside of Brandon Nimmo, just to kind of balance out the lineup a little more. I do
And
find
that
that
can't be DJ Stewart. I
it
think
can't be DJ Stewart.
it
It
just
can't
can't
be.
be.
It
Yeah.
can't be Jeff McNeil. But I do notice, and it stood out today, especially with the JD Martinez strikeout. But the struggles against right-handed pitchers with the sliders. I think with Alonso's chase frequencies, with Viento's chase frequencies, that right-on-right sliders kind of going away from them, kind of having them struggle. And when you stack them together, those back-to-back strikeouts are just tough at bats. If you had a lefty to break it up in between, I feel like it would change the approach a little bit and the game plan of pitchers, and you just kind of hope for some different outcomes. And even Brett Beatty, I mean, he has 4 home runs this year in 24 games, less than Jeff McNeil, and you don't have him on there, but he also has a max exit velo like over 110, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah. The
again,
problem is his EV90s aren't that
exactly. So
high.
most of the
So
time it doesn't happen, but he does
yeah.
have power potential. So for me, I've said it, but I would be willing to give him a shot over a DJ Stewart, even over a McNeil. And the one guy who hasn't provided power but has provided a ton of offense, he wasn't on that graphic, is Jose Iglesias. I mean, this is a guy that,
Yeah.
when you're looking at what he's done, he hasn't hit a home run this season, but I mean, he's still hitting
110
420.
max exit velo, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, he's still hitting the ball
he speed up
hard
his bat, which is
with the
pretty. He's
drive
talked
line
about
and
that
everything.
openly. Yeah.
So he's made improvements, but he's batting 425, OPS of 990. Extremely small sample size, but his
Yeah.
last start, another 3-hit game. So this has been a lot of 3-hit games from Jose Iglesias, yet he doesn't get the amount of starts that he should because of Jeff McNeil's contract. So, and it's good to have that from the bottom of the order. That's fine. Not everyone needs, I mean, ideally we'd love everyone was a big home run hitter, but as long as you're getting production from everywhere. So if Iglesias is bouncing on the bottom and Bader's giving you good production, then you set up those guys at the top to do their power thing. I mean, it's like, there's never a rest for the pitcher. There's always something to be concerned about. If it's not, the power hitters of Alvarez and Vientos and Alonso, it's like, okay, well, now these pesky guys at the bottom, they're getting hits. It's like there's still something to be concerned about as a pitcher. And in order to constantly average 6 runs, you need a lot of guys stepping up, because it's not just because a lot of times it had just been that Alonso and Lindor were carrying the offense. But we've talked about a lot of different heroes stepping up game on a game by game basis. Like today it was Nimmo, even though they didn't win. Some days it's Vientos. So there's just been a lot of guys stepping up, and it's why they've just had like you show those team rankings, because as a team they have been doing things like that the whole month.
Yeah, I mean, that's what calls for an efficient offense, and obviously that's been one thing that has been bailing them out with the tax pitching, as we've talked about for a majority of this episode. But even if you were going to look at it from the league scale, because we obviously can say, oh, this guy's hit a few home runs here and there, and it's adding to that total. If you want to look at the league scale, of course, the average slugging percentage, it's about 400. It's about like 397, with obviously a lot of swing and miss in this game. But if you want to round it out to 400, so 400 is about like the league average. You have 8 hitters as of right now qualified in 100 plate appearances. 8 hitters on this Mets roster right now with a slugging plus, I guess, if you want to say like on the the weighted runs created plus scale, slugging plus, where obviously 100 is the average. You're looking at it. Vientos, he's at 148. Alvarez 1 129. JD Martinez, 125. Pete Alonso, who's fourth on the team, interesting, 121. 114 from Lindor, 110 from Nimmo, 106 from Marte, and 105 from Harrison Bader. So that is a 8-man deep lineup, and it's not just like platoon situations. These are all separate positions in the Mets lineup. So when you have for the season, and I'm not even just talking about in June in general, because June has been even crazier. But when you have not 8 guys of the 9 in that lineup, and that's not even including Jose Iglesias, who has been great. That's a deep lineup, and not to mention when you look at it, the best teams, a majority of their offense comes from power. Obviously, the Mets I wouldn't say the Mets have elite power hitters, but they've been able to maximize the power fairly well. A lot better as compared to what they've done in the last 2 years before this. So it's really been encouraging. Obviously, Starling Marte is not here, so that kind of like clips him out of the lineup. The only guy left in the lineup that doesn't have it is the lowest on the team, that being Jeff McNeil. But again, you switch him out for Jose Iglesias, who's been fairly good. He's gotten his fair share of extra base hits as well. I'm pretty sure he's got quite a few doubles. I don't know, but he's had quite a few good hit, like you said, multiple 4 doubles. There you go. So he's had some multiple hit games as well. But like, I don't mind a guy just giving me, those 1 base outcomes from the 9-hole, and I think that's the perfect 9-hole hitter for a deep lineup. And it's been fairly impressive. Now, with a guy like DJ Stewart, I like the hitting profile he has. I think that he can be a good hitter in doses. But in terms of the versatility, I think that there's a way that they need to go elsewhere. He does have a minor league option if you want to keep him in this organization, which they most likely will because he's making $2 million, I think. Send him down to AAA. Get somebody else up here. Because we do have, what is it? Do we have 5? We have 5 outfielders on this roster, even without DJ Stewart, correct? So
yeah,
we have Bader,
Taylor as well.
Taylor, Gamble,
yep,
and then Nimmo. And, I guess we have 4. So we have 4 on this roster. So maybe you do bring in a utility guy as to where I think I would replace DJ Stewart with somebody like Mike Brossow in AAA, something like that. Like a little bit more of utility, versatility, because the guy that we were known to do it, he has not even been able to handle second base in a utility situation as of right now. This season.
It is 5 outfielders. It's 5.
It's 5 outfielders with DJ Stewart, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I would prefer that 5th outfielder to also be able to play the infield. Personally, I think that you can give a little bit more flexibility there. I think that the fact that DJ Stewart still just seems to have more of a gateway to the 5-hole is just. It just can't happen. I can't see that.
I think it's because
he
he's
can be
left-handed.
good in spurts.
That's my only way I could see it is it's just that he's left-handed.
Yeah,
because
of course.
Other than that, it just makes no sense because Gamble batted 7th today, and also I think that was because he was left-handed because they were breaking up the righties and lefties. But because Bader sat and I'm pretty sure McNeil batted 9th. So again, I mean. It's tough. I think in general, like we talk about with the way this team's constructed, it should just be your best hitters should be at the top, but that's just what they've been doing. And Gamble came out early for Taylor, so that was what they did. Stewart stayed in against a left-hander, and
that was odd. I was like, okay.
One of the things you could have done there, and Iglesias did not come into this game at all. I mean, one of the things you could have done was you could have had Iglesias pinch hit for Stewart, and if you want to, you could put McNeil in the outfield.
Is Gamble that bad against lefties?
He's not great, but I just think that the leash for him is just very, very just short right now. So
yeah.
I understand the timing.
Okay.
I mean, Tyrone Taylor was the tie. That's a tongue twister. Tyrone Taylor was the tying run at the plate. So they were trying to
Yeah.
get like one swing in the bat, get back into the ball game. So the pinch hitting, I didn't really have a problem with it. I thought it was a fine move. So, that was just
Yeah.
the way they constructed it, and that ended up being the outcome.
He has a career. Gamble has a career 724 OPS against right-handed pitching and a 687 OPS against left-handed. So it's not really
It's not that
really
drastic.
like marginal.
It's not Jock Peterson.
He's an average
drastic.
hitter against anybody, to be honest. Like, again, he comes off
But
the bench there.
but
That's his best
Taylor
role,
historically has been much better against the lefties.
Yeah, of course.
So it was the better matchup for sure. So
Oh yeah, it was better. It was just weird to see it happen in the fourth inning. Obviously, different different situation. Obviously, they were down a few runs. They needed a little bit of a spark to the offense. They were getting no hit for God knows how long. I mean, they got their first hit in the sixth inning, like we said. So the flow of the offense, they needed to get it going. And if it's a lefty-righty matchup, but for me, I think that you got to stop wasting your times with guys that can only hit lefties or hit righties. It's just, and DJ Stewart is one of those guys. He has only had like 4. Like, as a Met, he's had like 10 plate appearances against lefties. Like, that's how much they've protected him from lefties. And you got to be able to hit both, in my opinion, or you're wasting up a roster spot.
And, Brett, I mean, he has played left field in the past, so he would be a guy that could technically play the infield and the outfield. He's also been getting those reps at second base, so that's another way to just have Jeff McNeil play less because he plays too much. So I feel like, again, he's just providing you more value right now. He's providing technically more tools. And as Stewart continues to struggle, when Beatty was in the majors, the OPS of 633, right now Stewart's at a 666. Batting average, Stewart 183, Beatty you're looking at 229. The one difference is the OBP of Stewart 333. So he's really just been, like I said, a guy that's drawing walks, but with his lack of speed, that's not really doing much in this lineup right now. And Beatty also being left-handed, like I said, this lineup could use another lefty in the lineup. So I don't know. I think there is something to be said with the young guys, like a 3 of, like, you have Alvarez hit 5th, Beatty hit 6th, Vientos hit 7th, like just the 3 young guys kind of stacked together. It would make for something fun. It would be a fun look, but
like the Rangers did with the kid line.
I'd give it a try. I don't see the harm in it at this point, because Stewart, like, he just, and it's like we've also talked about Vogelback, there's no reason to give him so much rope to be like, oh, he needs to get this many play appearances because of past, like, production. Like, there's no reason to be this invested in him and so, like, this committed to him. I feel like,
and this comes
Beatty
to the
is
same...
the guy who is your first round pick. You've had higher expectations for. Like, there's something in there. I mean, obviously he just kills the ball right into the ground and takes out all the bugs on the earth, but you see, like, that there is power there. He's had the max exit velos in the major leagues. So it's just a matter of, like we say, just lifting that ball. And I don't know, like, there's something there.
I mean, that was a problem with Vientos, and he's been able to do that fairly well now.
It definitely was.
So, I mean, it still is an issue with him. Like, it still needs to get better. But, he's been able to work around it a lot better, and, better quality of contact from him as compared to somebody like Beatty. But I feel like DJ Stewart, I've said he's good in doses. Someone who can kill right-handed pitching off the bench, that's fine. He's a part-time player. But when you have other guys on this team where it's like, oh, they're good against lefties, they're good against righties, he can't face this, he can't face that, you're handicapping yourself way too much as to where you can't put any of these guys in every single situation, and it just becomes tightly knit situational. Not as bad as it was with Vogelbach, because Vogelbach didn't own a glove. DJ Stewart can at least play the outfield. But when DJ Stewart's not hitting, the ShopRite Schwarber of it all, right? He's not an everyday player. He can't play every day. And I understand that you're down Marte, but I think that if Stewart is hitting, I would have been willing to sacrifice that defense in the lineup. I don't know why he's playing right field, to be honest. Like, I'd much rather just move. Like, even if Stewart was hitting, I don't understand why he's playing right field. Bader has a good enough arm to play right field. Nimmo is fine in center field. We don't need to make him... He's not as fragile as everybody thinks he is. Yes, he's in his 30s, but he's not 85 years old. Like, I think that you need to use they haven't really used Tyrone Taylor's versatility as much as I thought they would, to be honest, where he can play all three outfield positions. I don't know if I feel like I'm saying that based off my eyes.
Well,
And we all
I'll
know
tell you
how,
what.
yeah,
I
yeah.
got you right here. Brandon Nimmo has not logged a single inning in right field this season. Not a single inning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want him in right field whatsoever. That noodle
Yeah.
arm does not belong in right in
But
right
but
field.
on the
Yeah.
flip side, if Bader's making the start, I don't want DJ Stewart in right field. And obviously we've had our concerns about Marte when he was healthy, quote unquote. He was having a lot of troubles moving around the
Yeah.
side to side. He just can't move with his lower half being compromised. So I mean, Brandon, he's been fine in center field. I think he
Yeah,
like
he's
in
been
short
fine. Yeah.
spurts, and even like he did full time the past couple of years. I don't see anything wrong with that.
I mean, it's been
Bader,
dispersed
I
fairly
don't
well.
think Bader
Okay.
has logged an inning in right field. Bader's only played center,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Taylor has probably played very little of left. And for Stewart, he's been kind of exclusively in right field. So you're right. It's been
Yeah, it's
kind of
weird.
odd that it seems like it's like, oh, this guy could only play right. This guy can only play
I
center.
know
This guy can
Stewart
only
has
play
a
left.
strong arm. I just don't think it's accurate at all.
It's not.
It's a
Yeah, it's
strong
not
arm,
great.
and that's basically just him being like a giant, burly guy. I guess. Actually, I was wrong. Okay, so Tyrone Taylor actually has 109 innings in center field. He has 138
29 in
innings.
right and 87 in left
Yeah,
this year.
yeah. So it's spread out fairly well, but I don't know. I think it should be a little bit more emergency as compared to somebody like DJ Stewart, where he's a left fielder. If he's owning a glove, he's not going to play. He's not going to play first base, and obviously with Marte out, it doesn't make any sense personally to have Marte and Stewart here at the same time. I get that they bat with two different hands, but Marte should be the left fielder. I think they should move him to left field. I've been open about this. But like in terms of the lineup, I think we're running out of patience where DJ Stewart should be getting as much playing time as he is. And I get you're short an outfielder right now. But it's really hard to justify this. And listen, I understand like his average being worse than Vogelbach. I've always been one, like, we all know how I feel about batting average. It's always been like I use on base percentage as my batting average. Like,
I mean, OPS
even if
plus
you're
at
translating it to-
103, so
yeah.
he's just hanging in there by a thread right now at the plate.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I think that has, it's probably more of a platoon thing. I get it, but when he's not producing in the little spurts that he deserves, because he's not, he shouldn't be playing. We shouldn't be saying, oh, DJ Stewart just needs the reps. He needs to play every day. Like, I'm not going out of my way to play DJ Stewart every day. I'm just not going to do that. Especially when you have tons of young guys here. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, well, I'm going to put him in right field because I need to get his bat in the lineup. His bat hasn't really been that good. Or I'm going to put him at DH because I need to give JD Martinez a day off. If I need somebody else to play DH besides JD Martinez, I'm putting Mark Vientos there.
JD Martinez has not a single day off yet.
Has he? He hasn't?
Nope.
No, he's played in every single game?
I'm pretty sure he has. I can't remember
Wow.
a day he sat.
Wow.
And again, it's DH, but I can't recall a day he didn't play.
Man's a hitting machine, no.
So-
So he can just get up and, like we've said, he can just get up and hit. It doesn't matter how old he is. The guy's a machine. But with the lineup in general, I mean, it's just been very deep, and you do have some of the concerns as to with Alonso as to where, we just really haven't gotten the production of Alonso recently, and hopefully it gets better down the stretch of the season. I'm really hoping. This season overall with the balance, there hasn't really been any outstanding hitters. So I am actually interested, and I've always been somebody who doesn't really give a shit about this, but I am actually interested to see who is going to be their all-star. I am interested because there's a few candidates, but nobody has really just completely ran away with it.
I wonder if
So-
Lindor could finally get it.
It might be Lindor. It could be Lindor.
There's
We'll
a case for Nimmo to make it just on his own merit. Forget every team gets a guy like Nimmo. He's made a strong case in left field to be a guy. I mean, I feel
That
like
is
he's
true.
checking all the boxes.
Left field is a little bit weaker in that National League. So, yeah, I mean, Nimmo hasn't been Nimmo, but he's been still very, very productive. He's been very close to his career numbers. If you're looking at
He's
slash
getting there.
line,
I
yeah,
think
he's still
like
getting there.
he's getting there. Like
He's
average
had a
is
few rough
down,
stretches,
but
yeah.
OBP power is there, and overall, like whether you're looking at OPS plus, WRC plus, he's still right
Yeah.
there as far as the overall
And that has more to
offensive
do with the league
production.
averages, of
Like
course.
yeah, he's
but it's
still
like
just a very
he's
productive
still been the
hitter.
130 bat in terms
Yeah.
of league production. So I mean that's Brandon Nimmo. That's what he's been able to give you year in and year out. So I mean I think he finally does deserve it eventually. So I'm looking out for it. I hope we do get an all-star stud here that stands out that can represent this team that's been on a seesaw all year. But in terms of studs, yeah, I gotta love
There you
that.
go. You had to get your word
Studs
playing
and
eventually.
duds. Everyone's favorite segment. Everyone loves this segment. I think people that have never watched this show before, they love this segment. Okay, one player that has played fairly well in this series, these last 3 games. One player that has not, and they need to step it up when we go off to DC for the next series. We'll start with studs. Frank, who do you got for this series?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give it to Brandon Nimmo. I just felt that this was a game, even though they lost it, like you're trying to win the series, you're trying to bounce back off of the loss, and Brandon really did everything he could to try to have the Mets win this game. I mean, breaking up the no hitter, tying up the game with a 2-run homer, and then tying up the game again in extra innings. And what I liked about Brandon Nimmo was there was first pitch swinging in those big opportunities with the runner in scoring position. So seeing Brandon Nimmo not be just like, well, I'm Nimmo, I have to take first pitch. Like knowing the situation of like when is the right time to take first pitch, when is the time to swing first pitch, him learning that balance as he's getting older, I think is just very good. And seeing him evolve with the game as it's evolving is also very encouraging. So I feel like he did everything he could. He's been, like we said, a steady bat day in, day out. So I just felt like today he just really stood out compared to everybody else on the team.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Pete Alonso on this one because he produced in every single one of these games. It hasn't been complete Alonso production as to what we want. There's been some big spots that he's messed up, but he had a hit in every single one of these games. He drove in a run in every single one of these games. That's what we need. We need him to produce offense, and he was able to do that in this series. And to be honest, I think that like behind Nimmo, like out of this entire series, probably the second best hitter in this series as a whole. Obviously, they've had some other contributions. JD Martinez was a little cold in this series, but I don't think any of the hitters are going to be in the in the dud category for this segment. So let's go directly to duds. Who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 guys. There's a few guys to pick from, but the 2 that really stand out, I'll go with the first one. It's Diekman. I mean, I've talked so much about the walks, the hit by pitch, the just putting everyone in just really bad situations. And again, the score of the game, how do you approach that situation? When you have a lead and you're up by more than 2 runs, or up by more than 3 runs, you can't be walking batters. You can't give free bases. You have got to just... you have to either trust your stuff or just make quality pitches to induce weak contact. It's like it's supposed to be pitching 101, but a lot of times it's just not the case. So for me, it has to be Diekman, because it's like it really, like you said, that domino effect of, okay, Diekman has a bad outing, so it puts Reed Garrett in a bad spot to come into a bad situation. So that when Reed Garrett has a bad outing, now it puts Danny Young in a bad situation. So it's just like you just destroy everybody by one guy having a bad outing.
Tag, you're it.
Yeah, that's basically what it's like.
Yeah. Tyler McGill, easily. I mean, I get it. Went 5 1/3.
He had to
We needed longer than
push.
that.
They had to push
had
like
to kill
everything
himself.
they could.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he also
is...
was lucky by the run support, that if they didn't have 6 runs on the board, it wouldn't have been as easy to push him, because it's like they gave you 6 runs, you're giving a little back, giving a little back, giving a little back, and like you're trying to hang in there.
Yeah. At the beginning, toward like the first few starts that he had this year, I was a little like I eased off of him a little bit because He got screwed around by the defense a lot. There was a lot of soft contact, lots of ground balls that were not handled, lots of strikeouts as well. But these last few outings, he's pitched himself out of this rotation. And visually he has, because he was just sent down to AAA.
Like legitimately.
And to be honest, I don't think I want to see him start a single game for the Mets ever again. It's either he's the bullpen or he's out of this organization, because he obviously can't handle it. And it stinks, because the longest that he was able to go was against a really good Dodgers team. 7 innings, 7 scoreless innings. I was like, oh my God, finally we're seeing the Tyler McGill that he possibly can be. But then we're going right back to the issues that he has had year in and year out. High pitch counts, tons of walks, not making good pitches, missing spots, lots of hard contact. And he just hasn't been able to put it together. So it's either he goes to the bullpen or not in the rotation at all. And I don't think, just by that impression of how they held him accountable after that start, obviously there was the feel of it with the tax bullpen, but I think that he is definitely lowered himself in the food chain. He's definitely lowered himself in the pecking order to come up here for the rotation. He's probably behind Budo right now. He's behind Christian Scott by far. He's behind David Peterson as of this moment, because Peterson's been able to give somewhat volume as compared to what other pitchers have been doing. He's probably behind some of the prospects in AAA as of right now. So he is dropping. I'm disappointed. I really am, because I really thought that at one point he started to look like he put things together deep in the pitch arsenal, able to get more swing and miss, more strikeouts. Defense was kind of screwing him up, so I was giving him the benefit of the doubt. But he's melted down these last few outings. And we're looking at the same issue that we've always had. It's a problem. And I don't know how long you can really hold on to this. Again, it's a different story. Again, and I say this as a big McGill fan as well, because I feel like at one point he will put it all together. I just don't know when. Whether it's for the Mets organization or not. Now, in terms of injuries, let's talk about those, and then we'll head out of here. Kodai Senga threw live BP on Thursday, and he will be throwing a bullpen session today. I believe he threw one earlier today, or he's throwing one at night. I don't know. Maybe he's a night owl, or he likes it during the daytime. I don't know him personally as a person, but he will be expected to begin a minor league rehab assignment in the middle of next week. So it's possible that maybe next Wednesday or Thursday he goes to Port St. Lucie or Brooklyn and has a rehab start. We'll obviously have our eyes on that. And he most likely will return after the All-Star break if he stays on pace in that week. Obviously, the 6-day rest of everything and all of that. Now, with Drew Smith, who is the most significant injury news of the last few days, the MRI imaging on his right elbow showed significant ligament damage, which means that he most likely will be having his second career Tommy John surgery in the last 4 years, as he's waiting a second opinion. Now, with him being a pending free agent, most likely Drew Smith has thrown his last pitch in a Mets uniform. Now, if you were us, we have a lot of criticisms about Drew Smith, but we never want to see a guy get hurt. So we wish him the best. Again, we have our, it's all constructive. It's on the field, but obviously you don't want to see a guy get hurt. Drew Smith, I would have rather to just get rid of on the waiver wire or DFA him. I don't want to lose him just because of injury, especially Tommy John surgery, which we know can derail somebody's career at any moment. Now, also, Shintaro Fujinami. Possibly a reliever option down the line at the pace that he's been playing. He pitched a perfect inning on just 6 pitches. His fastball topped 99 miles an hour. He was transferred to the 60-day IL on May 3rd, so they're going to have to reactivate him. And he is continuing his rehab assignment. I believe he is going to pitch in Brooklyn either tomorrow or the next day. So possibly that is an option. Also, we did get another perfect inning from Bryce Montes de Oca today for Binghamton. My guy Ernest Dove, he gave us that news earlier. So hopefully, some bullpen pieces are in here. They come up here and they could contribute because we are shorthanded to hell, as the kids say. Okay, so parting words going into this next series, going to DC for a 4-game set. Sour taste in our mouth to end June, but it has been a real encouraging one. 18 and 6, 18 and 7. I'm not sure what
Might
the
be
record
7,
is, but
yeah.
Okay. So some of that, but very encouraging June. What do you think?
For me, I'm just very curious to see kind of what happens Thursday. If it is indeed Christian Scott that gets called up, I do want to see the kid back, and also just kind of see how they use him because, like I said, they with the call up, they didn't build him up before the call up. So just kind of seeing what the game plan is going to be, what the pitch count limit's going to be, and also what the corresponding move is as well. Like, is it a Peterson? Is it a bullpen arm? It has to be a bullpen arm since I'm Miguel, you're rolling 4 stars. It has to be a bullpen arm. But for me, I feel like with the situation that the bullpen is in, I think calling up Bryce sooner rather than later is not a bad alternative. I think you just need to take a shot. I think you see that there's not much upside in the options that you have. You have to kind of reach down and take someone with upside, a young player, and say, "We need you right now. Help us out." Like you said, we're in a dire situation, and as far as the bullpen, not the team overall, but just the bullpen itself playing shorthanded, they need another person to step up because right now a lot of these guys, the Ottavinos, the Diekmans, they're just not getting it done. And like we said, Nunez is not available every day. Reed Garrett, you have to be very careful with him because sometimes he's good, sometimes he's awful. So they're just in a very tough spot. Even Adcock, if this is going to be his role, which I think it's going to, of like multi innings, he's only available one day. Howe's only available one day. So it's like someone needs to be here a couple of times a week that actually is being productive for you in high leverage. So that's the guy I'm really kind of hoping could kind of right the ship a little bit. With Fujinami, it's a little different. Like I understand waiting a little longer on him, but I want to see the other young pitchers get here, whether that's Scott, Budo. I just haven't heard anything. I have no idea when he's going to come back, onto this team. But I would like to see some kind of other creative changes. I just don't think that, like I said, Festa was not the thing. So that's another thing I want to see too. Is like if Festa indeed does get DFA tomorrow, like we're expecting it. But if that does happen, okay, what's that corresponding move? So I just kind of want to see how they're really going to try to figure this out as they're still playing shorthanded.
Yeah, I hope that they do bring in another bullpen arm, even though they have an extra day of rest. Because it, listen, all respect to Matt Festa. I'm sure he's a great guy. He's from here. Mm-hmm. He doesn't belong here. He just doesn't belong here. And it came pretty much evident. And whether that is maybe calling up somebody like Bryce Montes de Oca, who I think he's going to probably he's going to pitch in AAA first, but they're going to have to make some adjustments there. And I think Tyler J will probably be like the guy that gets sent down for Christian Scott whenever that time comes. But it is going to be a different, it's going to be 3 days in between that. So we'll see what those transactions are going to be. And they got to really fix this thing up. And obviously I gave my plan as to why. I feel bad for Matt Festa because I'm sure he wanted to pitch for this team or he wanted to pitch in his own city, but he just doesn't belong here. And he kind of just got thrown into the fire. And it's been quite a fire, this bullpen. And hopefully, in 5 games, we are going to get Edwin Diaz back. And hopefully they can sort this out. But they're going to just keep trying to piece this thing together. And hopefully they can stack up some more wins against a Nationals team that we know that they can beat. They have passed them in the standings. They swept them to start off this hot streak. So they need to get it going again. They need to get back on that horse, as the kids say. And they got to get it going because we got to continue to play winning baseball. They're 2 games out of this wild card, this hilarious race that we're in. And, it's not... Even though they got knocked out these last 2 games, it's not over yet. So you gotta keep going and regain that momentum, and hopefully they can start winning again, and we don't have the same conversations that we do the next time. So thank you guys so much for watching, listening. For those of you who had tuned in live, for those of you who watched the entire 2 hours, for those of you who popped in for a little bit, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Turn on those post notifications for this very podcast that goes live every single Sunday and Thursdays following every series of games, as well as the audio version that drops at 9 a.m. the following day. All right, so we did take one little bit of a punch in these last two games, but they got to bounce back from it. Also, follow everybody individually as well. Let's go Mets. We'll see you guys next time. We had a new intro this time. We have our new intro. We will have a new outro, but we're going to use the same one this time. So it's just wait a little bit on that, but we'll have a new outro for you guys very quick. So we'll see you guys next time.